Today on Rat and Cat, killer roads and what we can learn from actor Charles Levin's tragic end. Welcome to Rat and Cat, where we search, survive, and explore. I'm Nikia. New details have emerged over the death of Charles Levin, age 70, who disappeared this summer. Levin appeared in television comedies such as Seinfeld and Night Court and dramas like NYPD Blue. His disappearance exhibits bizarre yet familiar lost person behavior. Levin was last seen on June 28, 2019, and then was reported missing on July 8. The actor was found deceased in a remote area of Oregon on July 13. Reports from Grants Pass Department of Public Safety reveals that Levin got lost on a remote mountain road in his orange Fiat, which was found in an area of downed trees about 4 miles off the nearest asphalt road. The police report stated that the terrain was arduous and that the officers had to walk 1/4 of a mile from their emergency vehicles to get to the final location of the car, which had the passenger's side mirror sheared off. Responders reportedly said there were several fallen trees in the area that made getting to the vehicle particularly difficult. I would have never thought that the Fiat could have been able to make progress down this section of the roadway, the police report stated, noting that the car was finally hopelessly stuck on mounds of earthen material. The area around the front tires appeared to have been disturbed in an apparent attempt to free the vehicle. In the car were the remains of Levin's pet dog, a pug named Boo Boo Bear. Searching at night through thick overgrowth, police found Levin's unclothed body and badly decomposed remains at the bottom of a treacherously steep ravine. There were signs of animal scavenging, likely from turkey vultures, the report stated. The road was in such rough terrain that police ATVs leaving the scene were damaged from traversing the same road the Fiat was found on. Police ruled out foul play and suicide as the cause of death. The autopsy report stated the cause of death was accidental. Here on Rat and Cat, we look at stories of those who've gone missing so others can learn how to survive. In looking at Levin's case, we see some familiar patterns. First, lost people are often found in places that seem nearly impossible to get to. Secondly, Levin left his car and was found a ways away, unclothed. But what seems like really unusual behaviors are actually quite common signs that the subject is suffering from hypothermia. Mild hypothermia results in high blood pressure, shivering, rapid breathing, and heart rate, constricted blood vessels, apathy, fatigue, impaired judgment, and lack of coordination. It's this first stage of hypothermia that people seem to exhibit superhuman abilities to travel long distances, and which some people attribute to supernatural causes. But in fact, your higher brain functions from your frontal cortex have already shut down, and you're starting to be driven more by your primal brain, your medulla, which is responsible for survival, drive, and instinct. Next comes moderate hypothermia, which includes irregular heartbeat, a slower heart rate and breathing, lower levels of consciousness, dilated pupils, low blood pressure, and a decrease in reflexes. Finally, severe hypothermia results in labored breathing, non-reactive pupils, heart failure, pulmonary edema, and cardiac arrest. But what about his clothes missing? If you've watched my channel much, you already know about paradoxical undressing. I'll put up a link to a video with more details on that, but in short, paradoxical undressing frequently occurs with lethal cases of hypothermia. Shortly before death, the person will remove all their clothes as if they're burning up, when in fact they're freezing. According to the International Journal of Legal Medicine, the reason for this paradoxical behavior seems to be the effect of cold-induced paralysis of the nerves in the vessel walls, which lead to the blood vessels in your skin expanding, giving the feeling of warmth. Another theory proposes that the reflex vasoconstriction, which happens in the first stage of hypothermia, leads to paralysis of the vasomotor center, giving the sensation that the body temperature is higher than it really is. In a paradox reaction, the person undresses. But it was the end of June, summer, right? How can someone be too cold in summer? Hypothermia often sets in when people are cold and wet, even at temperatures as high as 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Levin's son had reported him missing on June 28 after the 70-year-old actor called a friend to say he was lost near Cave Junction, Oregon. Looking at the weather history for June 28 in Cave Junction, Oregon, there was some slight rainfall, 0.91 inches, enough to get someone's clothes damp. The average temperature was 64 degrees, with a low of 49 degrees, and Levin was likely found at a higher elevation than Cave Junction, which would have made the temperatures even lower, and well within the danger zone for getting hypothermia. But what would have caused Levin to go down the remote, unmaintained road in the first place? There are several possibilities, and some might alarm you. One possibility is that panic or desperation caused Levin to get out of his car in the rain, perhaps even before he went down the unmaintained road. But you'd think his car heater would have kept him warm. Well, the fact is, often people with early hypothermia don't realize it's setting in. That's why some older people have died of hypothermia in their own home. Another possibility is early dementia leading to a few bad choices that got worse. Drug use could also lead to impaired judgment that led to being stranded, but reports so far don't mention either of these possibilities in their findings. Mental illness is another option, but again, the reports don't mention that in Levin's history. Still, Levin's phone call to a friend for help before he disappeared reminds me of Bellingham, Washington resident Brad Hale, who called to say that he was lost and wanted to come home, but despite getting a ping from his phone, was never found. Hale did struggle with mental illness. But what if the early steps that led to Levin missing are much simpler? What if you and I are susceptible to the same thing that led Levin to his end? What if Levin was the victim of poor navigation? For example, in 2009, Alicia Sanchez was traveling with her 6-year-old son in Death Valley National Park when her GPS sent her on an ever-shifting path. It eventually sent her 20 miles down a remote road with a dead end at the south end of Death Valley's Owl's Head Mountains, where her Jeep Cherokee became stuck in the sand. In the 115-degree heat, they soon exhausted their water supply. After 5 days in the desert, Alicia Sanchez was finally found alive, but unfortunately, her 6-year-old son didn't make it. You can find similar stories of GPS-related fatalities from around the world. Maps can also fatally lead people astray. In fact, the Kim family story from 2007 is nearly identical to Levin's. The Kim family took a wrong turn and ended up stranded in snow miles up a remote mountain road. On some maps, Bear Camp Road looks like a straight shot across the Oregon Coast Range, but the road between Gold Beach and Grants Pass is a winding cliffhanger in the best conditions and impassable once snow hits higher elevations. After the Kim family took the wrong turn, the father, James Kim, walked back 16 miles to get help before succumbing to hypothermia and paradoxical undressing. Fortunately, his wife, 4-year-old, and 7-month-old children survived in the van for 2 weeks. As tragic as their story is, the Kims were not the first to perish on that road in the same way. But that's another story for another time. What survival tips can we learn from these tragedies? It's important not to rely on GPS or a single map when looking for shortcuts. Both often show old, unmaintained roads, misnamed roads, and roads that simply don't exist. If you're not familiar with an area, don't take shortcuts on the back roads. Stick to highways and freeways. If you become stranded in the winter, move everything you need from the trunk into the vehicle. Run the car for 10 minutes every hour, making sure that the snow is not covering the exhaust pipe and keeping the windows open a crack to prevent the buildup of fumes. Also create winter and summer survival kits to keep in your car. The kit should contain non-perishable foods, shelter, blankets, first aid kits, water, and necessary medications. I'm filing this video in my YouTube playlist called Odd Ways People Die in the Wilderness and How You Can Avoid Them. I'll put up a link to that here and at the end of the video if you want to watch more videos like this. And I want to hear from you too. Have you been stranded in a remote area? Has your map or GPS led you astray? Also, please share this video with others and support my channel on Patreon. You could save a life. Until next time, this is Rat and Cat, and I'm Nikia, encouraging you to get out there, be safe, and enjoy the wild.